Trauma inventory. This section includes exercise 10, completing your trauma inventory, journal prompt 11, exploring what childhood trauma has stolen from me, exercise 11, imagining a life without childhood trauma, and exercise 12, reframing your beliefs, a treasure hunt. So that should be a little bit more fun for you. Right? Why do we do a trauma inventory? What is a trauma inventory and how are you going to use it? So that's what I want to really go over here. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is what trauma is in this context. I already talked about the fact that we will so often compare our trauma to other people, but I'm going to ask that you not do that here at all. So if it comes up, even if it feels silly to you, you lost your doll baby. It happens to come up when you were 3 years old. You happen to remember that. Write it down. Okay. A pet got given away. You moved homes. You changed school. A brother or sister was born. These things might not seem significant from your point of view and your vantage point now, but they were important when you were a child, and that's what we need to focus on. So often, because we have intellectualized our trauma, I know that my pet dying was just a part of life, and there was nothing I could have done to prevent it, and but that doesn't have anything to do with the pain that I felt around that. And more importantly, with the value that I assigned to the pain that I experienced around that. So I don't want us being dismissive of ourselves. At the same time, I don't want you hunting for trauma. Okay. I believe fully that I was molested as a child. And over the years, I have really asked to see the proof of that because I needed to know for sure what happened. But when I really started digging in on it, when I really started getting some images, it was so much more distressing. And it's important that we're very careful and thoughtful in our healing and that we do not harm our psyche more in attempting to heal it. Right. So if it naturally comes up, let it. If it doesn't come up on its own, that's okay. This trauma inventory is meant to be a living document. Right. So this is something that I want you to keep adding to. I want you to mark things off as you feel like you've cleared that energy or properly addressed it. Right. So, why we do a trauma inventory is to really see it all laid in front of us, to call up what we need to so that it can be cleared. Remember, you cannot release something that you refuse to hold in your hand. So, we have to be aware of it to clear it. This is why these big kind of, I want to clear all my trauma and call back on my power doesn't work because you don't know what you don't know. And you need to be very specific when you're doing some of this work, all right? Especially around clearing trauma. You're not just going to clear all trauma by wishing that it was cleared. It's not quite the way that it works. Now, this trauma inventory is separated into 3 spots, okay? There's one column where you're going to put the trauma that you experience, okay? Whatever it is. Again, it might seem really silly to you. It's okay. Just write it down if it comes up. All right. And then you're going to put the approximate age that you were when you experienced that trauma. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want to try to get close if you can. Okay. And if you don't remember at all, but a number pops into your head, then just honor it. That's probably the number, right? Our subconscious holds much wisdom. Let it bring things up. And the last thing that we're going to do, not quite yet, is we are going to put the value statement that we assigned as the person who experienced that trauma. We're going to put that in the last column. This helps us to see very clearly, helps us to map things out. At this age, I experienced this, and this is what I said about what I experienced. And then it's much easier for me to see how this has impacted my life much broader. All right. So a good example is I had a client who was molested at a very young age. I think from like 3 to 13, she was molested by her uncle. And her first instinct was to say, it's okay. And I'm like, no, sweetie, it's not okay. It's not okay. Do you think it's okay to the 3-year-old that experienced it? She said, no. I said, okay. So what did the 3-year-old self say about the fact that she was molested by her uncle, that no one protected her and her family? And some of the things that came up were that she deserved it, that she was not safe, that the people around her were going to cause her harm. Okay. Think about what those value statements do from such a very young age, how it might inform how you see interpersonal relationships, how you see your right to safety, how you see your right to autonomy within your body, how you see your power. This was quite energetically and spiritually disabling for her. Quite disabling for her. She had endured relationships that really mimicked the pain that she experienced for a very long time. And that happens to a lot of us. Why do we continue to experience pain that was already so miserable in childhood? Why are we re experiencing it through a different lens? Why? Because as adults, we're giving ourselves an opportunity to heal from it. Anything that you haven't healed from childhood will get brought back up constantly in your adult life. It's not punishment, it's an opportunity, it's a blessing, it's an opportunity to address it so that it goes away. Okay. Pain, especially emotional pain, is not there as a punishment. It's there as awareness of damage that's being done so that you can address it and so you can be free of it. Right. So the first things we're going to do as part of our trauma inventory is just the age and the trauma. That's all we're doing right now. Right. Later, there will be more exercises for you to really dig in on those values that you assign to things. Right. And I want you to be really kind with yourself and compassionate with yourself here, because some of the values that you assign, most of the values that you assign as a child are going to be really immature. They're going to be really self-centered. You're going to put yourself in the middle of everything. And the reason that we seek to put ourselves in the middle of everything as children, and sometimes as adults, if we don't have much, emotional maturity, is because if everything is my fault, if everything is about me, if I'm at the center of everything that's happening, then I have more control. Right. So if I'm a child where I am pretty much powerless in that dynamic, right, especially in a dynamic where people are abusing me, the adults around me who are meant to keep me safe and protect me are abusing me. Well, it can be very mentally distressing to believe that they hurt you simply because they could and you have no power in it. It's much more calming for my psyche to believe that it's my fault. Well, if I was a good girl, they wouldn't do that. If I acted this way, they wouldn't do that. If I was more worthy, they wouldn't do that. And then you will try to take control by being a good girl, by showing up in more worthy ways. The problem is in childhood, that's so distressing and damaging because it wasn't my fault. So then I don't have the power to change another adult's behavior. So then it doesn't matter if I'm a good girl. They're going to continue to treat me that way. But from my perspective, I'm doing everything I can to mitigate any future damage, and I'm not effective at it. So that further breaks down my psyche. That's further destabilizing. I don't understand. I'm doing all the right things and they're still hurting me. It must still be my fault, because that's preferable to believing that you have no power and you're just subject to the harm that other people, subject you to. All right. So understand why your brain worked that way. Understand that you're going to have some very immature value statements that you assign to things, and that's okay. Okay. The first step is just allowing any trauma that needs to be brought up to give it space to be heard. Okay. And that is to say, I'm giving a voice to all of the versions of my inner child at all those ages that experience that pain. I'm finally giving them a platform to be heard. That's what I'm doing. And normally, once they are heard, they will be quiet. They just want to be heard. They just need the attention that they need. And then they will heal.